What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake and Kyle coming back at you today to talk about Week 9. Kyle, now, Week 9, we're not going to have too much here because there were so many bye weeks last week. I mean, at this point, we're just kind of just scraping the bottom of the barrel at some positions to find some options. But overall, we had some studs. We had some studs that underperformed. We got some misses. We actually got a lot of hits last week, which is great to see. Some new names that we're going to talk about for the first time. But Kyle, let's go ahead and not waste any time. Let's get right into our studs who dudded. Unless there's something else you want to waste time with.
No, because I don't like wasting the people's times. It's so important.
It's so important to the people. Our time is important too, Kyle. All right, let's move on to it. Let's start off here with Justin Herbert, who was not feeling the fanciest this past week. Didn't have a huge game, 245 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Didn't really get you that top 10, top 12 performance that maybe you were hoping for. Is that to somewhat be expected? Well, when you don't have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, that is like an issue. Yep. And then we're going to talk about maybe somebody else in this offense here pretty soon that also underperformed. I'm not entirely surprised with Justin Herbert. Marcus Mariota. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Jake, why in the hell are you putting Marcus Mariota under the stud category? And honestly, I didn't want to. But he was quarterback 9 coming into the week, and he absolutely sucked huevos this week. And maybe he's another one of my kryptonites. I just can't seem to get anything. I can't figure out Marcus Mariota. I just can't. And when you get a weapon back like Cordero Patterson, and knowing that Patterson scored some touchdowns, even though it was in the running game, I expected to kind of maybe boost the offense a little bit. Not so much for Marcus Mariota. He only ended up with 129 yards passing, no touchdowns, and 24 yards rushing. That's not good. Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Now, he obviously underperformed. He got hurt. He left the game. He did not finish, but he wasn't going to hit that number. The entire Green Bay Packers offense was horrendous against the Detroit Lions. Now, I know that probably made you a little happy as a Lions fan.
I was conflicted. I like the win, but I also would love the first overall pick too. So,
well, I mean, you've already had tons of early picks. You don't need any more early picks.
But we need one of those quarterbacks now. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud.
Now you're just getting greedy, is what you're saying.
Of course.
Okay, moving on. How about Donta Foreman? He's a guy who's been carrying a couple people for 2 weeks now. Back-to-back 118-yard rushing games. Comes out and actually, let's be honest here. The entire Carolina Panthers just came out and laid an egg. Joe Mixon beat them by himself.
It's hard to run when you're down.
You can't really rely on the running game when you're down 35-0. Yep. So that hurt a lot of people. Josh Jacobs underperformed once again. Maybe that hot streak that we saw earlier in the season, it has completely cooled down along with the Raiders altogether. This team is just there's got to be a head coaching change here pretty soon, Kyle.
Yikes.
I mean, it's bad with all the talent on that team, and you're just losing back to back games. Not good.
And especially when you're blowing leads.
Exactly.
Like huge leads.
Yeah. I mean, they had that game against Jacksonville. They started off so hot, and Devontae Adams could not be stopped. And then all of a sudden, Devontae Adams was like nowhere to be seen in the second half of the ball game. Leonard Fournette underperformed once again. The Tampa Bay offense as a whole underperformed because we're also going to include Chris Godwin and Mike Evans here as well. I mean, when the game was on the line, were they looking towards Godwin or Evans? No, they were looking at Scotty Miller. That everybody's fantasy darling, Scotty Miller was the guy in crunch time.
Especially considering Brady threw it like 58 times.
How many times did let's see here? Brady threw 36 of 58.
Yep. And Mike Evans and Chris Godwin barely got anything for you. Now, Mike Evans did drop like 2 passes that should have been pretty good sized gains.
Yeah, Evans is struggling. I feel like Evans just isn't there mentally this year.
Yeah, it's been kind of all over the place.
I don't understand it. It's irritating. How about Amon-Ra, the sun god? He underperformed with no more TJ Hawkinson there. We had, injuries all over the place. Amon-Ra didn't do a whole lot.
No.
DJ Moore, he's been carrying a lot of people. He was like, the wide receiver 2 overall over the last 2 weeks?
Yep.
And dude comes out and lays an absolute egg in that game once again. In a game in which you're trailing by 30 plus, you'd think that they'd be throwing it so much that DJ Moore would be peppered, but no.
I blame PJ Walker for that.
I do kind of as well. I mean, the quarterback play in general, overall. But when you got guys like Tommy Tremble and Terrace Marshall out there scoring points, you kind of hope that DJ Moore would be as well. And then 3 tight ends. Now I'm going to say these 3 names, and you're going to be like, why are they studs?
Why are they studs?
Well, Gerald Everett, Evan Ingram, and Tyler Conklin were all misses. They're all top 12 guys.
All top 12 coming into the week.
Coming into week 9, all 3 of those guys were top 12 tight ends. And how can you really afford to sit top 12 tight ends at a time in which there's bye weeks and everything else? So
not only that, but unless you own Travis Kelce, it's kind of all up for grabs at that point, because Zach Ertz hadn't been playing well. He finally did end up having a good game, and he'll come up later on. You've got George Kittle on a bye, Mark Andrews doubtful to play. So if you didn't own Isaiah Likely, you were scrambling for options as well. And Gerald Everett, no other options were there outside of Austin Eckler to throw to. So I figured you would have seen him a little bit more. Evan Ingram's getting peppered with targets. He doesn't get any all of a sudden in a game in which Jacksonville, we mentioned a minute ago, was down and had to battle back. And then Tyler Conklin, for as bad as the wide receivers outside of Garrett Wilson played very well. Outside of him, the wide receivers aren't doing much. Felt like probably would have seen a little bit more volume to him as well. And unfortunately, these guys just didn't get enough this week.
Yep, 100%. All right, let's move in to some of our misses now here, Kyle. And we're going to kick it off right here with Derek Carr. Now, I had Derek Carr listed as a sit for a lot of the reasons that we saw in the second half of that ball game, but unfortunately, with what they did to start that game and Devontae Adams, he basically made him a start in the first 12 minutes of that game. So that led to a little bit of a miss there for Derek Carr. Antonio Gibson, I wasn't overly high on, but he was somebody who was finding the end zone. He was getting involved in the passing game, wasn't really overly involved, only had 3 targets this past week, 2 catches for 11 yards. That's not going to cut it when you're only averaging 3.3 yards per carry on the ground and splitting touches with Brian Robinson. The backfield of the Jets. Now, this is one of those WTF 2022 moments, Kyle, because the Jets played the Bills. Now, am I saying that nobody can run on the Bills? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But did I expect both Michael Carter and James Robinson to both go out there, score 10-plus points? No, I did not. That game, that was a fun game to watch. I know the Bills fans are not happy out there, but when you have competitive games like that, it makes it a lot more interesting to watch, even if you have no vested interest in either one of those teams. So, James Robinson he's still toting that 3.7 yards per carry bag. I mean, he hasn't changed that, but he did.
And scoring. Gets a score, makes up for it.
Yep, and gets the touchdown, makes up for it. Michael Carter only had 1 target, 1 reception, and 10 yards, but did add in another 12 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown on the ground as well. So both those guys were misses, along with the backfield. These are 2 backfields, Kyle, that maybe I just avoid the rest of season. It's David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. I had both of them as like fringe flex plays, but only because of bye weeks. And they absolutely didn't do anything. Why? Because Justin Fields himself says, you know what, you guys, I'm going to go rush for almost 200 yards myself.
Most ever by a quarterback in a game. Most ever.
I don't need running backs. I will do it my damn self, is what Justin Fields said. Michael Pittman, Kyle, and then I'll go ahead and let you take over the misses here. But Michael Pittman, this one hurts my heart right here because we're wasting so much talent.
100%. And the whole offense in Indy it's not functioning right.
Why?
Unfortunately,
why are they doing this?
And
why is Sam Ehlinger playing?
Yeah, Matt Ryan comes in and he has a couple of good games and he has some bad games, but he was still making people fantasy relevant for the most part, outside of Jonathan Taylor being so far this season. But then all of a sudden we say, okay, we're moving away from him. We're going to Sam Ehlinger and we're trying this experience that has not worked out the last couple of weeks. So I don't know. I have no idea what Indianapolis is doing. So unfortunately, Michael Pittman is probably going to have to be a sit moving forward, even though he has been top 12 per game in targets at the position and top 24 in points per game as well. Probably going to have to just say, no, we can't rely on him right now until we see a little bit of a change again in this offense, and maybe Matt Ryan does come back out moving forward. Mecole Hardman, dude's just a touchdown machine right now. He's kind of like the Duve to begin the season, scoring a lot of touchdowns, but not getting a ton of volume to go with it. Now, he did see 9 targets in the game last night, which is good to see, but Kadarius Toney is going to be getting worked in here pretty soon. And that's been my issue with Mecole Hardman, and why I haven't been able to start him is because, again, Travis Kelce is your 1, Juju's morphing into your number 2. You traded for Kadarius Toney. What role was he going to have this week? So we'll see what happens with Hardman going forward. Terrace Marshall Jr., he scores a touchdown. I'm glad to miss on him, though, because he's a guy that I really do want to succeed. I liked him coming out of the draft. Was hoping Detroit would get him, but they got him on Ross St. Brown, so I'm happy still with that. But with Terrace Marshall Jr., hopefully he's starting to see a tick up. Garrett Wilson, tough matchup against the Bills, still was able to go out and produce fantasy relevant numbers, even though he didn't find the end zone. So good for Garrett Wilson to get out there and get moving. At least somebody is Zach Wilson's friend there, because we sure as heck know it's not Elijah Moore. And then Cole Kmet, back-to-back games with a touchdown. He scored 2 touchdowns this past week. We liked Cole Kmet to begin the season as well. And it's been like, what are the Bears doing? But it looks like they're finally starting to utilize the talent to the best of their ability. So it's good to see that. He scored 2. Cade Otton scored. They scored that game-winning touchdown. I had him as a sit just because, again, he hasn't really been doing a whole lot as of recent. When you throw 58 times, though, hopefully somebody becomes a star.
Exactly.
Noah Fant, it was really, I went back and forth on him and Disley, and I even mentioned that Disley's got touchdown upside. It wouldn't surprise me if Fant would be a start as well, just based on volume. And that's exactly what happened. Now, Disley didn't score, but Fant saw a ton of volume. And then TJ Hawkinson. I like TJ Hawkinson being a Lions fan. I know what type of, how good he is and what type of value he brings to an offense. But only being in Minnesota for a few days, it was really hard for me to say, let's start TJ Hawkinson and hope for better performances than what we've seen. Now, he didn't score. He didn't find the end zone, but he was out there a lot. 9 targets, 9 receptions. Dude looked great in that offense. He's definitely going to be a guy that we rely on moving forward.
Yeah, 100%. They are going to be utilized. And then they gave him the game ball after the game. Dude looks like a Viking in his face. Like, he just fits he fits the profile. All right, so those were some of the misses here of the week, but Kyle, we had some great hits as well. Let's start it off with the quarterback position. I had Justin Fields inside my top 12, but I did not have him high enough, Kyle. But he was still a start.
Sounds like Joe Mixon, also inside our top 12, but not
but just not high enough. I mean, obviously we had him as a start. We liked the matchup. I expected Justin Fields to continue. Or were we expecting 178 rushing yards?
Absolutely not.
Hell no, not at all. But he ended up scoring over 42 fantasy points. He was a hit. PJ Walker, I had listed as a sit, and a lot of people wanted to use PJ Walker with the bye weeks, and they're kind of referencing the last couple weeks of his performance and saying, no, this offense now is better. They've moved forward. They're utilizing their what? No, PJ Walker was not going to be a start still, so that was a hit. Geno Smith continues to be somebody who is definitely fantasy viable that we still keep faith in. A lot of people are kind of expecting him to come crashing back down to earth at some point, Colin. I would be lying if I didn't say
9 weeks in at this point.
At some point, I was like, I keep telling myself it's got to slow down a little bit, right? But no, the guy just continues week in and week out. He played against the Arizona Cardinals earlier in the season. It was his worst game of the year. He came back and rebounded. Cordero Patterson, this is why it's important to watch the videos all week long. We mentioned his name a whole lot in the live stream, and I moved him up inside my top 20 in the ranking show on Thursday. He ended up coming back with a vengeance and a couple touchdowns. Actually had another touchdown, I believe, called back from penalty as well. CEH had listed as a sit. It's a guy who's been scoring touchdowns in an offense, scores a lot of points, but I can't rely on it anymore now with the involvement of Jerick McKinnon more and Isaiah Pacheco, so he was listed as a sit. Then we got Kenneth Walker. I mean, I had him inside my top 10 this week, Kyle, going into the week. I loved him. Did I expect him to finish running back 2 overall? And honestly, this kid is almost unstoppable, Kyle. And I'm going to ask a quick question here because a lot of it has to do with recency bias. We've seen Kenneth Walker the last few weeks, but had Breece Hall stayed healthy, which guy are we talking about more right now? Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker?
I mean, that's a tough one because I mean, when Rashad Penny went down, we had made the comment a couple of times that Kenneth Walker has top 10 potential the rest of the season. Even in like one of my trade videos, I mentioned like if you were going to trade a guy like Saquon Barkley, you could do Kenneth Walker and someone else, and people were like, what? Why would you do that? Well, it's the way Kenneth Walker is playing right now in an offense that has generally with Pete Carroll been successful with running backs. It's just that Breece Hall has been so involved in the passing game up to his injury that it probably still would have been him just by a smidgen. But no, I think both of them would have been fabulous down the stretch, and Kenneth Walker just continues to find the end zone. Dude is balling out right now.
What about Travis Etienne as well? I had him verge top 5 this week, Kyle. I had him at running back 6. He finished at running back 3.
We told you all to stay patient with Travis Etienne.
And
I hope you listened.
Yeah, hopefully you did listen, because if you watch film from the first 3 weeks of the season and then the last 3 weeks of the season,
which we did, and we posted film reviews on it.
We did it for the members, absolutely. This kid looks like a completely different player. He is playing with confidence. He's getting the volume. He's making big plays happen. Everything we liked about Travis Etienne has come to fruition. He finished number 3 there on the week. What about let's move into some wide receivers. Now, enough about me, Kyle. Let's talk about you.
So, a few wide receivers that were hits this week. Josh Palmer was one. Again, with all of the players that were missing, it was like, hey, Josh Palmer, we want to smash start on this guy. Big play potential. Let's roll him out there. He goes for, I think he had just over 100 yards, right? And like a 108 or something like that.
You know what, Kyle? Let me get you the actual stats here.
Let's hear the actual stats.
Let's get the actual number here. Josh Palmer finished the day 10 targets, 8 receptions, and 106 yards.
Ooh, 106. I was 2 off. Very close. So, Josh Palmer has an excellent day for you. Darnell Mooney, he finds the end zone. Great day for Darnell Mooney. We moved him back to being a star again with this Chicago Bears offense has all of a sudden started to take shape, and they're starting to get a whole lot better, which is good to see. Lots of credit to the coaching staff for finally coming around and utilizing the talent the way that they should be. Christian Kirk finds the end zone again. Another really good day for him. Tyler Lockett finds the end zone again. Juju didn't find the end zone again, but he did have 10 receptions for 88 yards. So he put together a really nice day for you, especially if you're in a full PPR league. He's clearly established himself as the number 2. He's got the trust of Patrick Mahomes. So hopefully you kind of held on to Juju Smith-Schuster. He was another one that we told everyone to have patience on. He's finally starting to come around, which is great. A lot of people finding end zone. Alan Lazard found the end zone against Detroit. He had a couple of plays too that potentially could have been a little bit bigger, just didn't end up working out. And then Curtis Samuel, I will admit with Curtis Samuel, he would have probably been a miss. It had not been for the referee taking out, I think it was Harrison Smith
I think it was. I think I took the safety out, and
it should have been an interception, but Harrison Smith got taken out at that point. Big touchdown for Curtis Samuel. So he ends up being, a big play touchdown guy there, and ends up being a start, which I had him listed as well. And then for the tight end position, 2 guys I had listed as sits that didn't do anything for you. Mike Gesicki really has been touchdown dependent, even, in this matchup where Chicago did end up throwing it around a little bit because, playing against Miami, you were going to have to. I was still weary of starting him, even with the trades that they had recently made, moving him out, moving Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn out the door. Wasn't feeling Mike Gesicki this week, had him as a sit. He didn't do anything. Everybody and their mother wanted to start Dawson Knox, and it was only basically because he had scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. So I understand maybe why you were thinking about it, but I kept telling everyone this is going to be a really touchdown dependent play. If you don't have a really good matchup for Dawson Knox, it's not going to be worth it. Listed him as a sit. He didn't do anything for you. And then Dallas Goedert, I had him pretty high again this week, and he ended up going off for 100 yards on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, absolutely. And then and then Zach Ertz as well. Zach Ertz, another guy, had another solid day coming off of, some downer performances with DeAndre Hopkins back. So Zach Ertz, definitely somebody deserves some credit there in the hit category as well. But Kyle, we got a couple more bye weeks coming up here in week 10. We got the Ravens, we got the 4 teams. Yep, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Patriots, and the Jets. So we're not going to have the likes of Lamar Jackson. We know we won't have Mark Andrews now. Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Ramondre Stevens season right now won't be out there. Garrett Wilson. So we're going to have to look at this again, Kyle, here for week 10, make some more adjustments, maybe lean on a couple players that we maybe hadn't planned on at this point of the season, but we're looking forward to doing that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our week 9 recap. Hopefully you walked away with another victory. Kyle, I'm starting to see a lot more comments in the comment section of people who maybe started off a little bit slow, but they're gaining steam and making a run at the playoffs right now. And I love to see that down below in the comment section. So make sure you share those stories with us down there. We enjoy reading them. But for myself and Kyle, we're going to get out of here for the day. We got week 10 to dive into. If you haven't already checked out the waiver wire video, make sure you do so. It's kind of ugly this week.
It's bad.
There's not a lot out there.
I put a parental advisory sticker on it to begin the show.
Did we do that? Can we do that?
Oh, I don't know. I did personally.
Oh, you did personally? I thought you were in there dropping F-bombs.
I said this video is so disturbing. Don't let your kids watch it.
Okay. All right then. Yeah, it's pretty ugly out there, but we'll make do with what we have, and we'll look forward to another week 10. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week, and we'll talk to you later.